Welcome to the biotechnology chapter where complicated, my mind's going to explode, DNA information meets, whoa, cloning is pretty cool. Can I make a mini-me? That would be super. Um, so the simplest definition of biotechnology really is taking organisms or their cells, their molecules, and modifying them. So when humans modify any parts of these, that is biotechnology, right? Using technology to alter life, bio meaning life. So it's done for what the definition says, for practical benefits. Okay, well, that's where it gets a little murky. What is a benefit? Is your definition of a benefit different than mine? Right? Do different benefits take precedence? So is economy for all one of the top benefits? Or are we just looking at the bottom line of particular corporations and their idea of benefits is making a lot of money from something? Are we looking at health, nutrition? Are we looking at just extending the human life, or are we looking at enriching a human life? And do we have different definitions of enrichment? Does any of it have anything to do with social justice? Right? What does benefit mean to you, to me, to anyone else? But no matter what we think of biotechnology, what has happened in the past with what's already been done in biotechnology, what's happening right now, scientists working on things right now, to what's coming down the pike in the future, it's all fascinating. And it all has human implications. So something to keep an eye out for is, are biotechnology companies or products, processes, are they making big claims that perhaps aren't necessarily representative of truly what that item is or that process is? Or did the media get a hold of a simple piece of a study or one study or beginnings of something, beginnings of research, and make a salacious story about it, right? Like there's going to be a cure for this. There's a mention in your textbook about, blindness and how this certain study pointed to the direction of it could cure blindness, this biotechnology, but it was, it wasn't a very big study and there wasn't a lot of support. And 3 years later, it was kind of, the information kind of went in a different direction as far as the outcome of that biotechnology on those particular people who were in the study. So it also takes a lot of money to fund scientific research, in particular, as we're talking about biotechnology research. So we have to think about, who's funding the study and is there an agenda? Scientists themselves are not supposed to have any agendas or opinions about what they're working on necessarily when they're working as a scientist. Now, as a lay person, they can have their opinions, right? But we have to make sure we stay very objective as scientists when we are working on something. We inherently know that corporations want to make money. Of course they do. So what that means, though, is all this excitement about biotechnology and maybe cures for diseases, they might not do research on a rare disease your cousin Takish has or your sister Sally has if it's not something that in the big picture can make them a lot of money selling the cure for that particular disease. That's why we see biotechnology, a lot of biotechnology around insulin and the cure for diabetes. So another thing is you have to know that the scientific process is not a speedy thing. It could take years, decades for a particular process or product to come to a point where it actually can be utilized by humans for that benefit. We should hesitate when the media or business or politicians get a hold of a study that they likely don't really understand, and they make some claims based on the study that they're reading. Did they look at the sample size? Does the sample actually represent the population that they're trying to extrapolate or they're trying to apply these results to? was the study only done on isolated cells or perhaps in animals, not humans? And we're trying to apply this to a human benefit. So these are some of the things we really need to examine when we're looking at research and studies. So in this class, we're going to take a look at the sexier things like cloning, because everybody wants to know about cloning, and CRISPR, which is kind of new on the horizon as far as gene editing, super exciting. And we're going to look at particular areas of topics like agriculture. And there are pros and cons to the various biotechnologies that have been applied to agriculture purposes. So, I mean, biotechnology is something that may be able to help us navigate climate change and feeding the world, right? So farmers for a long time have depended on knowing a climate and knowing what can be grown there and how to grow it and what the food web in that area was, and so what pests would be in that area, etc. Well, now with climate changing, they're having to adapt, and they're having to figure out what products can be used in those particular areas. So it's very likely that biotechnology will, help us in agriculture quite a bit, and it has just to a very big extent. Having said that, there are definitely drawbacks and cons to some of the biotechnology, and even some, what I would say, sinister behavior of some companies when it comes to biotechnology. So we have to be really cognizant of that. Just because it's new and it appears to be working doesn't necessarily mean it's the best thing in the big picture, in the long run, for everybody. And then we're going to look in human health and the biotechnology that is in that area. Like I said before, amazing that insulin has come from biotechnology, and we can talk about that. It's actually super cool. But on the other hand, there are ethical implications when you're talking about editing human genes. So, and we touched on before how forensic science is using biotechnology to advance that science. So that's really cool. So let's jump into this chapter with an open yet analytical mind.